Hey, Mr. Publishing fans, it's me, SR Mori, and today we're going to find out the answer to the question of who is the best Batman. Now, I have a system in place to try to figure it out objectively, to kind of remove some of the subjectivity. Obviously, it's impossible to remove all of it, but I have created a system in which hopefully that will be minimized. But please leave a like down below and subscribe if you haven't. I greatly appreciate it. Yeah, let's get into it. All right, so ranking the Batman. Let's do this. All right, few clarifications first. So, first and foremost, I want to give a special mention to Kevin Conroy and his performance in the animated series and the Arkham video games and several movies since then, animated movies. He even appeared live action in a CW crossover as Batman, an older Batman. And I just want to go ahead and say that I'm not including him because it is an animated performance and there's just not as much to a performance. There's not the physical eye facial movements and things. And again, because he had a series and basically more screen time, it kind of puts him at an advantage in that regard. So I just want to say, if you are looking for the perfect iteration of Batman, look up the stuff that Kevin Conroy has done because he's unequivocally the best Batman, because he does so much work with it, and the people that did the animated series and the Arkham games just really understood what they were doing and the assignment. So if you want the Batman that gets a perfect 5 bats out of every category that I have on the following slides, the animated series and the Arkham games are where Batman is on all cylinders firing. So let's look at the criteria. What am I going to be, what makes Batman a perfect Batman? I've said the animated series and Arkham video games displays the perfect Batman for you from the comic book. So what about that makes it perfect, right? What about the animated series and the Arkham games makes the depiction of Batman perfect? So first of all is the Trinity persona. Even in the Arkham games, but especially in the animated series, the fake Bruce Wayne, the real Bruce Wayne, the Bruce Wayne he is around Alfred, and then Batman, are all very clearly identified and distinct and good and well done, properly done. Next, he's a detective. This is in the animated series and the video games. The detective aspect of the character is usually the thing that is missed in live action, and so that's a big criteria as well. Next is stealth, and the aspect of him kind of have like a ninja-like stealth and using that to cultivate fear. Again, you see that in the animated series. Not as much, but you see it in the Arkham games especially. There's a whole aspect to the gameplay that goes around that. Next is the fighter. That is definitely prevalent in the video games and the animated series as well. Gadgets and tech, the vehicles like the Batplane, the Bat Cave, the Batmobile, things like that, batarangs, grappling hooks, the gadgets. That's one of the things I really like about the character Batman. So it's important for me to see that in the movie. Next is, that's supposed to say vigilante. I don't know if I spelt it right. Personality. So is he intelligent? Does he have a quiet confidence like he does in the comic books? Is he prepared a lot of the time? Is he very stubborn? And does he obey the infamous comic book rule of not killing? Are his motivations clear? Are you able to sympathize with his motivations, understand his motivations? Are they good? That's so well done in the animated series and the Arkham games especially. Relationships with villains and Alfred and Gordon. How are the relationships? How does this Batman interact with the people around him? And then other things to consider the ranking would be the acting ability of the person playing Batman, the physical stature of, does he look like Batman, and the aura that he emanates. Those are all the criteria of Batman. Just threw this picture in here because I thought it looked cool. All right, so first let's look at Adam West. We're going to go in chronological order here. I gave Adam West a few brownie points in some regards because I'm trying to keep in mind accuracy to the character for his time period. And I've been reading some of the old comic books like from like World War II era, and it really does feel like Adam West Batman. I think they really nailed that. But anyway, so the Trinity of Persona is 2 bats because I don't really feel that there's really any separation between the personas. There's some detective work going on, but in a goofy kitsch sort of way. So 2 bats. Stealth, there's no stealth. That's a sympathy bat. Fear, I don't think he's putting fear in anybody, so there's no fear element really with Adam West. That's a sympathy half bat. Fighter, I mean, for the time, he's a pretty good fighter. He takes people out. Pow, wham, schmack, right? Gadgets and tech, he's got all the craziest gadgets. He's got things that are always just convenient for the plot, but still, he's got the gadgets. There's no denying that. 4 bats. Aura and personality would be 3 bats. Again, that kind of has to do with his intelligence, his quiet, stoic kind of Batman personality. Is the personality right? And I would say for that time period, it's right, but certainly not current comic books. Motivations clearly stated, not really. Relationships are pretty well done, although albeit in a goofy way. Acting, I got to give him 4 bats, 4 out of 5, because that's hard to pull off. It's a very goofy show, but he plays the character serious, and that is talent right there. So I think Adam West's acting ability, his line delivery, committing to what the show was excellent. Physical presence, unfortunately, is half a bat because that's not anything against Adam West. I think he's a very handsome man for that time especially. But because of the way the show and the movie was done, I don't think he was meant to. So that's a total score of 25. So the next live action Batman is Michael Keaton. All right, so you can see that Michael Keaton has a better score here. The Trinity persona is 4 bats. I really liked how Michael Keaton made it to where you could tell Bruce Wayne was really tired, right? And the Bruce that we see with Alfred is different than Batman. There's 3 distinct personas here. Batman when he's Batman, Bruce when he's with people that he knows well, like Alfred, and then Bruce when he's putting on this facade. Next is detective. I gave him 2 bats because there's not really hardly any detective work at all. Those are kind of sympathy bats, to be honest. Stealth, he has some. You see some, especially at the beginning of the movie. So I put kind of 3 bats as like, okay, he has average stealth. It's not great, but considering the other Batman, he's like average. He's okay. So if you compared him to the Arkham games, he'd probably have 1. But I consider his stealth average. His fear, the fear he instills in criminals is also about average for Batman. If you're looking at compared to me, it would be 5 bats, but compared to comic Batman, it's about 3 stars. Gadgets and technology, he's 4 bats. He's got the tech. There's no doubt about that. It's a little cheesy at times, but it hasn't aged particularly well, but that's not his fault. Personality, again, I have to take a dock of 2 bats, mostly because he is a freaking sociopathic murderer who just kills people left and right and has no qualms about it. In fact, he seems almost giddy at times, especially in Batman Returns, to kill people. So for that, I have to give him 3 bats. He kind of really, really falls short in that no kill rule part. But he does have that stoic quietness, which does give him some bats, and he does have the Bruce Wayne persona pretty well figured out. Motivations, I give him 3 because it doesn't really stand out, but it's not bad, it's not good. Batman in his movies doesn't really have much development whatsoever, so it's kind of just average. I might have given him a sympathy bat there. Relationships, I think he does the relationship with Alfred and the relationship with Vicky Vale and how he interacts with Joker. I think he does it very well. How he interacts with Catwoman is perfect. That's the way that relationship should be. I think that, however, Michelle Pfeiffer carries the weight on that as well, though. Acting, I have to give him 5 bats. I don't see anything wrong with Michael Keaton's acting. I think his ability to play the tired, kind of exhausted Bruce Wayne because he's staying up all night fighting crime, and the way he plays Batman, I don't have any issues with his acting ability. Physical presence is 3 bats. It's not bad. It's not great. He's kind of small and his head's kind of big. It makes his head look big and his body look small. I don't really think he has much of a physical presence. Michael Keaton's not a very big guy, so I can't give him any more than 3 there. I just say average. 3 bats, if you can't tell, is kind of average. So next bat, live action bat, is Val Kilmer, and Michael Keaton's currently in the lead with 37 points, 37 bats. So Val Kilmer, I felt, played the Trinity persona very well, pretty on par with Michael Keaton. However, the detective, stealth, fear are all less than Michael Keaton. I do think he's a slightly better fighter than Michael Keaton. If you watch the movie, I think you'll see what I'm talking about. He does fight a little bit better. His gadgets seem a little bit less, and the Batmobile is quite terrible looking. Aura and personality is, again, average. Motivation, there's not really a whole lot there, just like with Michael Keaton, but I feel like there's even still maybe less here. Relationships are kind of forgettable, how he interacts with Riddler, Two-Face, and part of that's not Val Kilmer's fault. I think Tommy Lee Jones was directed to do a horrible job with Two-Face, so that's not really Val Kilmer's fault, but that kind of deters the relationships that we see in the film with Alfred and with Two-Face and Riddler and such. I thought his relationship with Riddler was decent, though, which, I mean, he does get 2 bats. Acting ability, I actually think Val Kilmer does way better than people give him credit for, so I'm giving him an average of 3, but as well as I don't think that he necessarily had to do anything that was challenging in terms of acting, so again, he has 3. And physical presence, again, just average. It's nothing to write home about, and you got those bat nipples, so. Score of 26.5, so Michael Keaton is still in the lead as the Batman. Next is George Clooney. I thought his portrayal of the Trinity of Personas was not bad. It was pretty average. There's no detective work. There's no stealth. There's no fear component. There's kind of a fighter component, I guess. He does have gadgets. I mean, he's not like he has a lack of it. The Batmobile is still hideous, though, so that takes him down a bit. Aura and personality, it's there. He doesn't play a bad Bruce Wayne. He's not the greatest Batman, though. He's a more cheesy Batman. Motivation, there's not any, really. Relationships, I do have to give his 4 bats because of the way they do the Alfred Bruce Wayne thing, Alfred's dying sort of thing. Acting, I gotta give it 2 bats. I don't think it's a great performance, to be honest. It's probably not George Clooney's fault. It was just the director, poor direction. Physical presence, again, is pretty average for a score of 24. So that means Val Kilmer is better. I believe, actually, George Clooney I have as the worst Batman. Yeah, so Adam West has even beat George Clooney. All right, next we have Christian Bale, who, as you can see, is doing pretty well on here. I think Christian Bale does very well with the persona of the 3 sides of Batman. When he is with the execs of Wayne Enterprises, I mean, he is playing up the fake Bruce. When he's just with Alfred, or Rachel. It is real Bruce, and you can tell when he comes out of that hotel that he just bought, you can see the change in the persona between fake Bruce and real Bruce just from before he talks to Rachel to when he sees Rachel's face. You can see the change, the physical change in Bale's performance from fake Bruce to real Bruce. And then there's no denying that he emulates Batman because he does that voice to separate them. And I personally love the voice. I think it makes sense and it matches the character. I don't get why people make fun of it. I think it's awesome. The detective work is better than what we have seen from previous Batman, maybe on par with Adam West, Michael Keaton, maybe, but it's still like barely there. People do forget there is more to detective work than being on a crime scene. I mean, he does interrogate people. He does go to crime scenes a little bit, but it's still barely there. Stealth, he's the best. 5 bats. That sequence in Batman Begins when he catches Falcone, that is the Arkham games. Stealth Batman. Fear, 5 bats. Perfect. He is really the first Batman that showed me, oh, Batman's supposed to be a scary character, other than like the animated series. But he was the first live action one to be like, oh, okay, yeah, okay, this is what this character is supposed to be. Fighter, I give him 4 bats. I don't give him 5 because the camera is always shaking, and if you actually look up the videos or you watch him fight Bane in the snow, you kind of realize the fighting choreography is actually not that great. But it's still better than anything we've had before. So 4 bats. Gadgets and tech, I think this Batman probably has some of the best. I don't care for the bat plane. I think it looks like a roly-poly turned upside down. It's quite ugly in my opinion, but the other gadgets and stuff are so cool. The tumbler is so cool that it kind of makes up for it. So 5 bats. Aura and personality, I give 3 stars because he does kill. And there are a few instances where it's like, well, if you didn't kill anybody, it's because of sheer luck. And it is directly your fault that they would have died. Like those cars just happen to be empty, like that you're blowing up. Or he blows up a cop car and the car like flipping and spinning and they magically didn't die. So like to me, he does break that rule. He kills Two-Face as well. So he does break the rule, but barely. So I give him some sympathy there. But another thing that Bale does that does not match the persona is I don't really get the quiet confidence from him. He seems more like a boisterous, loud, arms flailing, punching Batman instead of a quiet, collected, like catch your fist and punch. Instead, he's like, just like, screaming. He kind of comes across as a brawler, screaming Batman, not necessarily quiet and reserved, confidence Batman. I still like it, though. I'm not saying it's bad. It's just not necessarily the Batman you see in the comic books. In just that facet. Motivation, I think Batman Begins very clearly sets his motivations, and we follows that through. Nolan does a great job of keeping that up in each movie. Relationships, 5 bats. The Alfred Batman Bruce Wayne relationship in this trilogy is worth 5 bats by itself, not even including the relationship with him and Joker and him and other characters, like Harvey Dent. Acting, no complaints. I think Christian Bale does it flawlessly. Physical presence, it's there. I mean, he's intimidating. If you saw this guy, especially the Batman Begins suit, in the street at night, and you were a criminal, you would probably pee your pants. And then he's like screaming and like breaking your arm. The physical presence is there. So total score of 49, which is pretty darn good. So Christian Bale is now in the lead. All right, next is Ben Affleck. I think that his trinity of persona is pretty spot on too. Especially, I think he's the closest in appearance and attitude to Bruce Wayne in particular. But like when he's at Lex Luthor's party, you can see that switch between real Bruce to fake Bruce as well. And then when he's in the bat suit, I mean, he is Batman for sure. There is actually a decent amount of detective work in Batman versus Superman. People kind of ignore that, but pretty much Batman's, what he's doing throughout the whole movie is detective work pretty much, until the third act. So, I mean, I think there's more detective work in Batman vs. Superman than the whole Nolan trilogy combined. So I do have to give him one more bat for detective work. Stealth is pretty high. It's not as big as Bale, but I think that's because Affleck didn't have as much time on screen. I think if Ben Affleck would have had his own Batman movie, it probably would be at 5. But like when he Lex Luthor's watching like the screen and he like swoops and takes that guy, that's what I'm thinking about. Or when first introduced to him in BVS, and the stealth that we witnessed there, and even a little bit of the warehouse scene, you see some stealth there as well, which, I mean, that's great. Fear, this Batman, I like Bale. Oh yeah, there's no question there. Five bats. Fighter, I think Bale is the best Batman fighter that we have. That warehouse fight scene it takes the cake. It's like straight out of the Arkham games, period. Absolutely perfect Batman. And he's a brawler without appearing loud and boisterous like Bale. He's a brawler whose like movements are fluid and he seems confident and he seems like he knows what he's doing. Just the whole, not just the moves and his ability, but his demeanor while he's fighting is better than Bale's. So, gadgets and tech, he has my favorite bat plane by far. I love his Batmobile. I love how he uses gadgets while he's fighting in that warehouse scene. He's like using gadgets and his fists like equally. And I love it. I can't emphasize that warehouse scene is so perfectly Batman. There's only one critique I have about that, and that leads into the next thing, and that is that this Batman absolutely murders people. He's not as bad as Keaton because he's not doing it with a laugh and a smile on his face, like some kind of sociopathic Marvel hero, but he is still like just mowing people down. So he is, aside from that though, I think Ben Affleck does a perfect job. If he didn't so brazenly kill people, I would probably put him at 5. That being said, he is portraying a version of Batman from like The Dark Knight Returns. However, The Dark Knight Returns hints that Batman kills in that comic book, but it's never explicitly stated. It's not like a confirmed kill, but it looks like maybe he kills like 1 or 2 people in that comic book. So like I might give him another bat if they confirmed, oh yeah, Batman did kill that guy in The Dark Knight Returns. Dark Knight Returns, Batman kills. But at the same time, in The Dark Knight Returns, he uses rubber bullets a lot, and this Batman clearly does not. So again, I have to keep that at 3 bats. Other than that, the quiet stoicism and all of that is perfect. He really is, except for the kill rule being broken, the perfect Batman. And by the way, I'm fine with the version of Batman that is, that Dark Knight Returns. I love it. BVS is one of my favorite movies. So that's not me harping on that creative decision. It's just we're looking at comic book accuracy, who's the best Batman. And it's undeniable that in the vast majority of Batman comic books, he does not kill, and he's very firm on that. Motivation, 5 bats. I think it's very excellent. Batman's psychology is explored so well. I think that his motivations are laid out better in Batman Begins, but the psychology motivations behind Batman are better outlined in Batman vs. Superman than even the Nolan trilogy, I think. It's so well done. Relationships, 4 bats. The way he interacts with Superman, the way he interacts with Wonder Woman is spot on. I didn't necessarily care for Jeremy Irons, Alfred he's not my favorite. I don't not like him, but he's not my favorite either. So that's why it's not necessarily 5. I don't really feel that Alfred and Batman's interactions are super comic booky in BVS and Justice League. Snyder Cut, regular Justice League doesn't count. But again, 4 Bats, pretty darn good. So yeah, I think mostly he doesn't get as much screen time. If he got more and Alfred was a little bit less of a snarky butthead, maybe they would be higher up. Acting, all the way. I have no complaints about his acting. I think his acting ability is all the way there. Physical presence, 5 Bats. You can't deny it. And so that leaves him at a score tied with Christian Bale. But now the question is, what about Pattinson? What about the new Batman? Is he the best Batman? Well, let's look at it. First off, the Trinity persona is 2 Bats because it's almost just not there. We did see a little bit of it. When he's with Alfred, I mean, he is a Bruce Wayne. He's not Batman when he's with Alfred. He is himself, right? And then when he was at the funeral, there wasn't a huge difference between him and any other time that he's on the screen, but there is a little bit of a difference. Very small, but it is there. So I'd say that he probably has one of the worst in terms of separating the 3 personas. However, I think they plan on developing that as the movies progress. So his score there, I think, will most likely go up as the movies continue. So, and again, I'm not complaining about that. I actually like what they did there. It's something different. But, you've established it in the first movie. Now we can have the character grow. But as of just that first movie, it's not really there. And again, there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. But if we're ranking who best personifies the Batman character, I have to take some points off for the lack of that there. Next is detective. There is not a live-action Batman that depicts the detective element better than Robert Pattinson. I think that's where this Batman and this movie shines the most. Stealth, I put it at average because it's not really there. It is there a little bit in that elevator scene, just a little bit, just enough for me to give him like half another bat there to make that 3rd. And I get why, though, because he in this movie isn't afraid to die, so he just kind of charges headlong into danger, and I like the way the footsteps, and he does use some stealth coming out of the shadows, but I would obviously like to see more of it. So I kind of put him in terms of stealth at average because it's there, but I'd also like to see a lot more kind of go into the Bale direction of taking enemies out one by one stealthily, right? Next is fear. I think this movie really articulated very well how afraid people are of Batman, and I thought it was perfect. That intro with the criminals and the Pattinson narrating over it, when that light hits the sky, it's not just a call to warning. It's one of my favorite, it is my favorite opener introduction to the Batman character out of any of the movies. But, yeah, so definitely fear. Fighter, I gave him 5 bats because, I mean, he's got some pretty slick moves. There's not a whole lot of it in the movie, but what we do get is really well and really smooth in the camera. We can actually see what's going on. He is using gadgets. He's using a taser. He's using his grappling hooks. He's using, he does use his adrenaline. He has a sticky bomb gun, but I didn't see him use that in the movie. He does use his battering knife thing. I'd like to see him have actual batterings. But he has the gadgets. He's got the contacts lenses. He's got the computers, and he's got the coolest Batmobile that I've ever seen. That Batmobile scene, if Ben Affleck takes the cake for best combat scene and Bale takes the best stealth scene, Pattinson takes the best Batmobile scene. So I think his gadgets are all the way there. Again, I'd like to see some batarangs. So, and maybe a few other, make him use a few other variety of gadgets. So maybe his 5 bats isn't quite as strong as, say, Bale or Affleck, but that Batmobile and the fact that he does use a lot of gadgets keeps him at that 5. So aura and personality, Pattinson portrays better than any of the others that quiet stoicism, confidence / inner rage that has Batman. There isn't a live action Batman that when he's just there not fighting that feels more like Batman, right? He's just that quiet, reserved, very intelligent, confident Batman that you see in the comic books and the animated show in particular. So, and he doesn't kill, so that keeps him at 5. There is an instance where I think he could have done more to prevent someone from getting killed, but he's not the one that killed that person. He didn't pull the trigger or even aim the gun. So, although I think he could have done more to save that person, you can only expect so much in a realistic film where he can't just spontaneously, like Adam West, have the correct gadget that he needs to save that person. And I will also add, I didn't mention this, but Adam West does actually kill somebody. I forgot the exact moment, but I watched a movie from Watch Mojo where they pointed out where Adam West actually does kill some people by dehydrating them into powder and never putting them back. So they're kind of dead. So anyway, so motivation, I think his motivation is very clearly stated, and I liked how different it is from the others. They don't necessarily, we know the Martha and Thomas Wayne thing, we know that, but I feel like we got to know this Batman's motivations on a very personal level. I feel like I know this Batman's heart better than the other ones because of how intimate the movie is. We're hearing his thoughts upon occasion. We're reading his journals. He's almost in almost every scene. So I feel like we know his motivations very well. Relationships, I loved his relationship with Catwoman. It was perfect. The relationship that Batman should have with Riddler is perfect. The relationship that Batman should have with the Penguin is perfect. The fear on Colin Farrell Penguin's eyes when Batman's approaching him was so perfectly done. That's the relationship Batman should have with his villains, is that he scares the living crap out of them. And I loved the relationship with Riddler and Batman. I thought that was excellent. Catwoman's relationship was excellent. Alfred, there's not a lot to it, but I did really like that scene in the hospital. So, again, relationships are all the way up. Physical presence, I don't think that there's any denying that either, especially with the suit. Now, he's not as bulky as Ben Affleck, but I still think he carries a presence equal to that of maybe Christian Bale. Maybe it's slightly better even because the suit doesn't look as goofy as the Dark Knight suit to me. The Dark Knight suit looks kind of weird on the neck. Acting ability, I mean, there's no complaints. Maybe slightly a few lines are delivered a little too moody, but it's Batman, so that's expected. The ability to articulate emotion through little facial expressions. I feel like Pattinson articulated emotions so well under that cowl. So did Ben Affleck. Those two stand out, but I think Pattinson might surpass Affleck just a little bit in that category. Mainly because Pattinson got more screen time. So the final score is 50. All right. So Pattinson has a score of 50 bats. And I will say, I think that his score will go up. He only has one movie. I also think Ben Affleck's score would have gone up if he would have gotten more screen time and maybe a movie. But I think in particular, Pattinson's will increase in score in the Trinity of Persona and Stealth sections. All right, so end ranking. We have George Clooney in last with 24 points. Adam West in second to last with 25 points. Val Kilmer third to last with 26.5 points. Michael Keaton with 37, so there's a pretty big point jump there. Bale and Affleck are tied for second at 49 points, and Pattinson takes first place with just 1 point. And I do believe that he will increase in those points as time progresses. Of course, he might end up losing points if he ends up killing, so we'll see. So out of the possible 55, Pattinson is the best live-action Batman. All he needs to do to be the perfect Batman, as perfect as the animated series and the Arkham games, is to be more Bruce Wayne, continue having epic gadgets and vehicles. He makes himself. That adds some points there. And adding stealth to his repertoire. More stealth, more Bruce Wayne persona, and continue to develop more gadgets and cool vehicles. And it's way even cooler that he makes them himself. So that is my Batman ranking on who is the best live-action Batman. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. It's okay to disagree with me. I think this is... I spent a lot of time thinking through this, and I think I did a pretty good job being pretty fair. I mean, 49 to 50, that's pretty darn close. And that being said, I think these last 3 live-action Batman are almost all perfect. And I'm very blessed, and I'm very thankful to have all of them. I love all of these actors and what they did for the character. Even George Clooney. I love how he made this kid-friendly Batman movie that I can show my kid. He was the first live-action Batman that I saw and remember. And so that holds a special place in my heart. Adam West did that for my dad, which then he imparted the love of the character to me. So I owe a lot to Adam West as well. I think Val Kilmer gets a bad rap. I think Val Kilmer is the best part of the movie. I think the rest of the movie kind of drags him down. Michael Keaton saved Batman from being a goofy, kitschy character. And so did Christian Bale. And Christian Bale, to me, Bale's kind of the Batman that I grew up through my teenage years having. And so for me, he's still in my head. Bale's the definitive Batman in my head, right? Pattinson is, although he has a better score slightly, he's still on the road to being that. But since Bale has a trilogy, in my mind, he's still the definitive Batman. And I absolutely love Ben Affleck's Batman. BVS is probably my favorite superhero movie, and it's mostly because of Ben Affleck's Batman. I absolutely love him, and I care for him on a very deep emotional level. I relate a lot to him in the term in how they made that movie about him losing his mother in particular. And then, I think Pattinson's going to continue to get better, and I think he shows the most qualities from the comic books in his live action adaptation by 1 point, but I think he will grow. So let me know your thoughts below. Take care. Have a good week. I'm going to try to do maybe one more Batman video and kind of go through maybe some different ideas for a sequel that I think would be pretty cool, and different ideas for villains that I think would be pretty cool. Peace out. Have a lovely week.